education. They started looking at reentry as part of their efforts, employment and training. But we have to recognize that the National Football League, what they were specifically looking at are three areas: education and economic advancement, police and community relations, and criminal justice reform. So for the National Urban League, it has asked the 5 affiliates to really look in their respective area at housing issues, training issues, placement issues that all the individuals who were released from prison might be experiencing. We should recognize that there are 36,000 individuals released from prison in Florida each year. And that population, that are fighting things like not being able to vote, financial obstacles, not being able to get a job, those are the individuals that we're impacting. So those individuals in this way. We're working with local organizations such as Operation New Hope, Prisoners for Christ, and you'll hear about those individuals who will be serving on the panel that will be talking about this in particular. And what we're doing is opening up a conduit by which individuals that are being served by those organizations that can capitalize on the training of the Jacksonville Urban League. Right now, we're providing virtual services, virtual training, but those individuals who have the wherewithal to participate, we're offering them certifications, and that would lead, I'm sure, to them having better opportunities for a job. We're also looking at, through our youth crime prevention program, how can we then engage the local football team, which is the Jaguars, in our efforts to create some mentors for these youth in and off season, so that these individuals can share their personal experiences with young people and help to steer them in a positive direction so that they can have a positive life. So we've already started with our first meeting with the Jaguars last week. We are very hopeful that we can really work with their new vice president for social responsibility and members of the Jaguars team so that we can have them engage in our town hall meetings such as this, and hopefully look at working with the other football teams and the players in the other 4 cities where we can start having dialogue about some issues that impact us locally uh, within these areas. And finally, we want to be able to have individuals that are looking to receive some financial training, who are looking to purchase a house or might have issues with their landlords. Uh, they can also come to the Urban League and receive services to help assist them with the issues. We recognize that this is a big issue in Jacksonville, but I want to assure all of you that the Urban League, the Jacksonville Urban League, is ready, willing, and able to assist those who call upon us for our services. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chester, for giving us the overview of the program. We're very grateful and anxious to move forward with it, and we're excited. Next, I'll have Camille Will Thomas take over. She will be guiding us through the panel. And Camille, I'll let you get started with the panel self-introductions.
Thank you, Mr. Stone and Mr. Danford and Mr. Daniels. Good evening again, everyone. Welcome to our town hall. We are grateful for all of you attending. So before we get started, I would love to thank our coordinators, Michelle Andrews and Jocelyn Mora. And I would love to go down the line and introduce our wonderful speakers. Well, I'll let them introduce themselves and talk about their positions in their respective organizations one by one. We will start with Mr. Neal, then Reggie, then Jeff, and then Barbara.
Thanks, Camille. Thank you very much to the Urban League for allowing me to be a part of this conversation. I've been looking forward to it all week. My name is Neil Voles. I'm the Deputy Director for the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition. And I know we've got a little bit of time slated to talk about some of the issues that we deal with in terms of returning citizens and how returning citizens reintegrate into the community. So thanks for allowing me to be here.
Good evening again. My name is Reggie Fulwood. I'm the program director for Operation New Hope and our Ready for Work program. And this is, anytime we get an opportunity to talk about this issue, whether it's criminal justice reform or the reentry work we do, is very exciting for us because the need is so great. So we truly feel like, the more providers, the more folks that are in this business of helping people transition and get back on their feet, the better. So it's great to have these other great organizations and people a part of this forum tonight. So thank you for having us.
I'm Jeff Witt, director at Prisoners of Christ, faith-based reentry and transition service. I'm just thrilled to be here and meet all these wonderful people that are working and serving and trying to make things right. I'm just honored to be here. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Barbara Richards, and I will echo what everyone else has said, which is that it's an honor to be here with such esteemed colleagues. And also, I'd like to give a big shout out to the grantors for putting this together, for funding this. This is a really wonderful thing to do. My name is Barbara Richards. I'm a bit of an outlier here because I'm in Sarasota. I am the president, CEO, and founder of Project 180, which is a prisoner reentry program. Thank you.
All right, and we thank you all of our panelists tonight for coming out. There is certainly a wealth of information and a wealth of knowledge on this panel tonight. If any of you have questions, please comment in the chat box down below. And at the very end, during the Q&A session, we will address those questions afterwards. So before we get started, we do have a few polls that we will be presenting throughout the night in between our speakers. So we will dive right into our first poll just to see, get some feedback from you all, and hopefully you all can walk away knowing some interesting facts. So take a minute and answer the poll question.
All right, Michelle, you care to comment on the poll?
Sure. I didn't know if Camille was going to or not. So can you all see the results from the polls on your screen?
Yes.
Excuse me, I need to interject because I couldn't answer the poll. I couldn't find it.
Are you on a phone? I think that might be why, if you are.
Yeah, I'm on a phone. I just did a get out the vote push. So I rushed into the house to grab my phone to get on, and the phone is always the quickest for me.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we will have 3 more polls. So if you have the time to get onto a computer anytime. Also, this is being recorded, so you could always look back at them. But
oh yeah, I would just talk about, excuse me, I would just talk about as far as to get to answer the poll. It's okay. I understand. I won't be able to answer the poll because I'm not.
To a computer, you could answer them. I'm sorry. Zoom is kind of weird with the phone calls. But at our results here, we can see that there's a large section of miseducation, I would say, and maybe less so miseducation and more so not looking for the correct answer. You're not going to find something you're not looking for. And I'm hoping that as this as this event escalates, you will see, can you guys see the results from the poll questions?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, you can.
Okay, perfect. So as this goes on, I think it will be really eye-opening, and I personally put together these questions So we just wanted to see where you guys' mindset was at, and hopefully at the end of this, you'll see how drastic this issue is, not only within the United States, but within Florida as well. As you see, this is Floridians. So that's 1.4 of us that are, well, you'll see. Okay, that's that.
Thank you, Michelle. And if anybody any of our panelists want to speak on these polls at the very end, because we are pressed for time, we are going to get started into our presentation for tonight. So without further ado, we will hear first from our speaker, Mr. Neil Volz, coming from the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition. So we will hear from him first.
Awesome, thanks, Camille. Part of what I'm here to talk about is felon disenfranchisement and kind of the history of felon disenfranchisement in Florida that leads us up to kind of this moment we're in today, where we see returning citizens out voting in ways that they were not able to during our past history. And I say that as someone who's spent 6 of the last 7 weeks bus touring around the state of Florida, talking to returning citizens, encouraging returning citizens to get registered to vote, and then ultimately to go out and vote. And our organization, the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition, is kind of best known for our work around Amendment 4 that passed in 2018 that liberated 1.4 million people, 1.4 million Floridians from a lifetime ban on voting in the state of Florida. It was a ban that had been in place for 150 years. It started Jim Crow era policy right after the Civil War, an effort to block newly African Americans from voting. And what we saw was that the challenge of public policy built on hate and its impact and how it can grow in our communities. Ultimately, that cancer that began 150 years ago and an effort to block African Americans from voting ultimately impacted every community across the state of Florida to the point where we were a state that had 1 in 4 people suffering from felon disenfranchisement and across the country. We were one of 4 states that permanently barred people from voting. And we witnessed the large expansion of democracy in 50 years when we passed Amendment 4 as a state. There's a more complicated story to that, but I would love to just talk a little bit about how we got to Amendment 4, what it meant to pass that, and the values and kind of the culture behind this movement that is alive and well today. It's something that we see growing and gaining an influence in our state. Ultimately, the passage of Amendment 4 came out of the pain of a broken system that had millions of our loved ones, our neighbors. I'm a returning citizen. I got a felony conviction almost 7 years ago. So I was one of those people who was living through this broken system in which clemency wasn't working the way that it should, in which people were stuck in a second-class status. And our loved ones and our family members rallied around us and said, you know what, if the government won't do anything, if our leaders won't do anything, except kind of talk a little bit about what we could do, there were a lot of great efforts to move this issue, but ultimately there wasn't the political will to do it. And so the people ultimately took this into their own hands. And a movement was led by a returning citizen, Desmond Meade, who's our executive director of our organization. And we saw what's possible when people rally behind a very simple idea and rally around the real lives of real people. And we collected over 1 million petitions to put on the ballot here in Florida, an initiative that was relatively simple. It basically said that we were going to end this lifetime ban for people with past felony convictions who completed all terms of their sentence and had not committed a couple of different crimes, murder or felony sex offense. And so what we saw was 2/3 of the public rallied around this idea and ultimately tore that wall down in November of 2018. It was an amazing moment because I think we all know Florida, right? Florida's close. It's going to be close. It's close right now. I think I read somewhere where since 1992, we've had over 51 million votes in this state, and the separation between the two parties in those 51 million votes is 20,000. So we have a hyper-partisan situation. And most of the folks who, talked to us about this prospect said, you can't put an initiative on the ballot that talks about controversial things like felon voting, crime, all these things that people thought were going to be talked about as this movement began. And what we saw actually was just the opposite. We saw that if we focused on the real lives of people and we focused on love and not division, that people actually would come around and they would rally around their neighbors and their loved ones and the people they care about. I know that when people went into the voting booth in 2018 in November, they weren't voting for a politician and they weren't voting for a political ideology. They were voting for their neighbor, their loved one, or somebody that they cared about. And so our belief is that this movement built around, that pushed through Amendment 4, can be a catalyst for even greater change, and that people's voices back, especially people like myself and so many others who have been impacted by the criminal justice system, that we now bring a whole new voice into the conversations around the things that we're discussing tonight. It's kind of like I would say that, if you wanted a farm bill and you didn't include the farmers, we now have a whole new constituency, and these aren't like immediate results. We have 67,000 returning citizens registered to vote since Amendment 4's passage. That basically doubled the number of people with past felony convictions who are currently voters in the state of Florida. And we take the long view of these things. We see the trajectory of this constituency growing. We see it being embedded and growing in the communities all across the state. We see amazing leaders, including here in Jacksonville, people who have been impacted by the criminal justice system, who have taken that past pain, those past challenges, and turning them into present purpose, and trying to create good public policy so that people don't have to go through the same challenges that we went through. And so that leads us up to kind of where we are today, right? After Amendment 4 passed, we saw the legislature take action, in which they added some specific requirements around financial obligations that began this roller coaster ride that we've seen in felon disenfranchisement for the last 2 years. After the legislation was passed and signed by Governor DeSantis, it immediately went into federal court and state court. And from the returning citizen perspective, and that's the perspective that I bring to this conversation, it's been a real up and down conversation. Just 3 or 4 months ago, we were situation here in the state of Florida in which hundreds of thousands of returning citizens who owed financial obligations went to bed at night believing they were going to vote in this year's election. And then about a month, 5 weeks ago, another court decision came in, and those dreams and those hopes for those hundreds of thousands of people who believed they were going to participate in democracy were dashed by a federal an appellate decision that said, no, you in fact cannot vote. And what we saw in that moment was a real true blue celebration of democracy. I'd like to thank everybody who took part in this kind of rallying around that we've seen over the last 5 or 6 weeks around returning citizens ever since the 11th Circuit decision, in which we saw nearly 100,000 people donate over $27 million to break down barriers to nearly 40,000 returning citizens who are unable to vote because they're too poor to be able to pay for their fines and fees. And we think that is an incredible act of civic participation, that even in this moment of hyperpartisanship, even in this moment of disinformation and demonization, that people could rally around the simple idea that if I do something, I can help engage another human being engage democracy. And so we think that is giving us a lot of wind behind our sails as we move into the next phase after this election. Whoever wins, that we can continue to build progress around this movement that believes that people with past felony convictions, returning citizens, have value and have merit in our society, and that our voices should be heard. Not only should they be heard, that we can add value to the public policy discussions and create an environment that allows for the kind of changes that I know we're talking about here to prosper. And so I'm really excited to dig into this conversation a little bit further. Happy to answer any questions, and just do appreciate the opportunity to take part.
Thank you, Mr. Volz. I definitely resonate with what you had to say. And it just, you being a returning citizen yourself, it just tells me that it's coming from a place that's genuine. And I thank you for that. So next up, we will have a poll before we hear from Mr. Fulwood. That we have another poll for you guys to answer. We won't go too much into it because we are pressed for time, but we do want to get your feedback on this poll. So. And thank you, Barbara, for answering some of the questions in the chat. Please, if any of the panelists or anyone else wants to answer, is an expert on some of these questions and wants to answer it, that's more than fine. At the very end, we will read through these questions so that everyone who may have not had a chance to see the questions and the answers will know how to find this information. So.
All right, guys, so here are our results. The only brief comment I'll say on this is I love how diverse this is, because that means that we're getting information out, and that makes me so happy. The only input I have on this is that according to the BrennanCenter.org, it's a research facility, they said that this was proven to hit Floridians of color, Floridians who are minorities, the hardest in terms of the fines for reasons unknown. But so awesome. I will stop sharing this now. And back to you, Camille.
All right, and we will hear next from Mr. Fulwood, Mr. Reggie Fulwood, coming from Operation New Hope. And yes, we are ready.
All right. So are we doing the PowerPoint, Camille, or?
Yes, I'm sorry. Jocelyn, are you able to? There we go.
Okay, great. And I promise I will be brief. I will not actually read each slide. If we can go to the next slide. Again, it's really an honor for us to be here at Operation New Hope and really to have Prisoners for Christ here in Project 180, because the work that we do, we feel like every city in the country should have reentry not-for-profits or organizations that are helping people transition and get back on their feet. The other neat part about the work that we do, it is absolutely proven that if you invest in education, programming, and employment opportunities, the recidivism rate goes down, the cost of corrections go down, and the unemployment rate goes down. The other benefit to investing in the work that we do in reentry is that it creates more income tax and sales tax revenues. They go up for the municipality. And so, okay. That wasn't me, by the way. I want to start off by making that point. So the first slide we're looking at really, the other point I want to make from the beginning is about incarceration in Florida. Florida is a unique state in a bad way because our rate of incarceration is scary. If you look at this slide, 833 people per 100,000 people are incarcerated in the state of Florida. If you look at it compared to the United States of America and other countries like the UK, Portugal, France, Canada, Florida is unfortunately one of the worst states in the country as it relates to incarceration rates. So that's why the work that we're doing is so important. Mass incarceration is a major issue. Criminal justice reform, we have to continue to fight it. And so that makes this work really, really important. If you'll go to the next slide. I just want to real briefly talk about the cost to incarcerate. If you look at the numbers, it's about $20,000, 20 plus thousand a year to incarcerate, which is ridiculous.
I'm sorry, Mr. Fulwood. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Is there anyone who has their mic on right now? If everyone can mute their mics at this time. Not sure who it's coming from, but all right, we will continue. Sorry about that, Mr. Fulwood.
Mr. Fulwood, you are muted, sir. I apologize.
Okay, no problem. So we can move on from this slide. I just wanted to capture the cost to incarcerate so people understand how expensive it is to have someone sitting in a prison every year. This next slide really addresses the broken justice system. Poverty, we know from studies and we know from the work that we do, poverty is the main reason people end up incarcerated and in the cycle of chronic incarceration. We know that we have a broken system as it relates to the bail system is broken. It forces people to accept plea deals that they probably shouldn't be accepting. We know that once you're incarcerated, your fees are building. You're sitting in a jail or in a prison and your fees are actually building and you're not working or you don't have the resources to pay those fees. We have clients who get out of prison and they're in debt with fees that they couldn't do anything about. And thanks for the work that Florida Rights Restoration is doing because it's addressing some of those challenges, but it's a broken system. It's almost ludicrous to think that I can get a court fee when I'm sentenced, I go to prison and those fees are racking up when the system knows that I'm actually incarcerated and not working. So the cycle of incarceration continues. So we know that communities experience higher rates of crime, unemployment, recidivism when poverty levels are low. So that's something we got to focus on. So one of the things, if you go to the next slide. So Operation New Hope was formed back in 1999. We were founded as a community development corporation. We've grown since then. We've replicated in Tampa and Tallahassee in the past. Last year we hosted Vice President Mike Pence and Ivanka Trump. The governor was here and they were here not to talk about partisan politics, but really to talk about the work of reentry. And we've been fortunate enough to have the last 4 presidents have supported the work that we do. And so we're trying to build on that. And that's the importance of this slide, just to say that, now the work that we're doing has now become bipartisan. And that's how we, advance the cause, right? We take it from a higher level. It's not about Democrats or Republicans, it's about people. And that's really helped us and helped everyone else advance the cause. We can go to the next slide. And so we feel like our program is called Ready for Work. It's really a unique program from the sense that it focuses on the four core areas that we think make our program successful and help people. So the business community is one, faith community, the criminal justice community, and the overall community as a whole, the neighborhoods, the people, the local governments. Bringing those 4 strategic partners together has allowed us to be successful in the work that we do. If you would go to the next slide, please. And so what is Ready for Work? Ready for Work, again, is a reentry. So we help people, and I won't go through all the bullet points, but
I think it's coming from John S. Are you muting the mic?
It was somebody else before who they keep getting muted, but continue to do it. So I'm removing them now.
Thank you. All right.
All right, no problem. So what is Ready for Work? Briefly, so we help people with really a holistic solution is what we call our program. You get out of prison, we will pick you up from the bus station, we'll bring you to our office. On day 1, once you're signed up, we'll help you get housing. We provide 90 days, up to 90 to 120 days of transitional housing. We help you with medical care. We provide transportation through bus passes. We provide lunch daily when you're in our program, clothing for interviews. And so we try to meet all those basic needs. We have partners that we work with that provide food and eyeglasses and all the things that a person needs. We make the assumption that when you get out of prison, you have nothing. So when you show up here, we want to help you stabilize, get a roof over your head, get a way to get around town, food in your stomach, and really help you get stabilized. The other component of the program that's key is getting a job. I said that poverty is like the #1 indicator for recidivism. So we have a 4-week program. Our normal program is 4 weeks. Right now, we're kind of in a COVID phase where we have a 1-week program, and it's limited to 9 people per week. But really, it's you come in the door. We have 2 full-time instructors. We teach employability skills, things, resume writing, life skills, soft skills, and we also have vocational training as a part of the program. We have a partnership with UNF for warehouse and logistics. We do customer service. You know, we have apprenticeship programs, forklift certifications, et cetera. So it's really, at the end of the day, we realize that in order for a person not to recidivate, get out of poverty, they need a living wage job to create the stability that they need in their life. If you go to the next slide, please. And again, just a little bit more about the program. You earn money. We do provide a stipend every week in the program. We do a graduation stipend as well. And the key is getting you hired. We work really closely with area employers, about 400 different employers we work with to try and get folks hired. Right now, our average wage is over $11 an hour. Ideally, we want that to be around $14 to $15 an hour. We really want to get our wages up as high as possible. So again, when people get out of prison, or when people have been affected by the justice system in some way and they're having trouble finding a job, come here. We want to get you stabilized and get you on the right track. If you go to the next slide, please. You know, and we know just a couple lessons learned. One is family reunification is vital. People come in our doors, and people come out of prison with, post-traumatic stress syndrome. They come out oftentimes broken in various ways. And so family reunification is critical. So we have sort of a program within our program called Breaking the Cycle, where we focus on reunifying people with their families, especially with their children. A lot of our clients don't have access to their children. They're in the court system or foster system. And our case managers work with them to get back in their children's lives with the ultimate goal of getting custody of their children again. And so that's a really neat part of what we do. I think if you will go to there we go. And just, I said it earlier, employers are the key. We work with some great companies that basically, they know that we properly vet people and we bring them good clients. And we know that, not every single person that comes to our program is going to be successful, but we know about 75 to 80% of our people are going to get jobs. They're going to stay out of jail, and they're going to get back on their feet. And the last thing I'll talk about is policy change. So we talked earlier about Amendment 4. Policy change is critical. The Ban the Box initiative that the Jacksonville Chamber kicked off a couple of years ago is important. We're working with the state attorney's office. Actually, one of our great state attorney is on our board. We work with the court system, probation. So policy change is critical. If we can divert more people out of prison, if we can get legislation changed, those things will help long term. So we realize that doing this work is programmatic, that we do this work every day, but we also realize that policy changes are critical for the long-term success in sort of changing the dynamic and fixing the criminal justice system. So with that said, again, thank you for the time. And, Urban League has been really important nationwide, but especially to the city of Jacksonville. So we appreciate Richard Danford's leadership, Dr. Danford, over these years. So thanks for having us.
I want to apologize. I did not know that Zoom bombing was actually a thing, but it's very clear that it is. So I apologize, Mr. Fulwood, that your presentation didn't get as much attention as it truly deserved, especially the message you're trying to send. And I apologize for any additional interruptions that we may have, because apparently there are multiple people who are doing this. It's really incredible and really disrespecting the message that we're trying to give off tonight. So I want to apologize to all of you. We've kicked out 3 people so far. So just, I'm sorry.
All right. I just want to say, look, we understand it's not your fault. Unfortunately, we're living in a pretty divided country right now. So just we'll continue to press on and do our best and just kind of pray for the ignorance and hate.
Thank you. Can anyone hear me right now? Okay, I'm so sorry. I could not unmute myself. I don't know what that was about. But yes, thank you, Mr. Fulwood. I'm sorry. I was saying the whole thing and I realized I was muted. But yeah, thank you for that. And it definitely points out the fact that the recidivism chain needs to be broken in our society, and that the same factors that are affecting specifically African Americans who are disproportionately imprisoned in our systems, it is important that we highlight those same factors that are affecting them into being incarcerated are the same factors affecting returning as citizens once they are released and trying to enter back into society. And it's just that cycle, that vicious cycle that you pointed out. And it just makes me think of, just coming from my favorite video, a quote that says, if society makes thieves, how can we punish them at the same time? And Ever After, if anyone's ever seen that. But yeah, so thank you for that, for your knowledge on that. And with that, we will move on to our next poll. Thank you guys for all continuing to participate, especially with the Zoom bombing. We will move on to our next poll of the evening. So we hope you all are ready to engage once more with our poll. So.
All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and share the results on that one. Sorry, just for time concerns. And within that, couple million, 1 in 13 of those are African Americans of voting age disenfranchised, which is 4 times greater than the non-African American average rate of disenfranchisement. And that's 7.4% of the African American population, which is compared to the 1.8% of non-minorities. So that is just a fun fact. And I will have these, all of these sites for you guys afterwards if you're interested. Camille?
All right, thank you for these polls. And we will hear next from Mr. Jeff Witt, coming from Prisoners of Christ.
Hey, how are you? And thank you again for this opportunity and this privilege. Prisoners of Christ is a faith-based organization, reentry and transition service for ex-offenders. Once they're connected with us, we do refer to them as clients, trying to be as respectful as possible. We have a residential service and an employment program. Within our residential service, we have 5 homes. We're able to house up to 25 guys. The majority of them do have violent felony past, so housing them makes it a little difficult. But while they're in the program, and which sometimes is over a year, we don't kick them out after a year, but we do have quite a few rules and programs they have to participate in. But they participate in substance abuse, mentoring, life skills, budgeting, anger management, and these take place each week. We also have the employment program I just mentioned a few seconds ago, but and everybody in the residential service, they also participate in the employment program. That's one of the expectations. We know there's a direct connection between finding work and not reoffending. But the employment program assists men and women with any criminal history. It doesn't matter whether it's violent, non-violent, even sexual offenders. We'll help them find meaningful employment. So what we do is we initially set up an appointment. We've been doing that online right now or over the phone, not in person, but we meet with them for a couple hours. We develop a resume and we begin to coach them how to answer those tough questions in an honest fashion, yet to point to how their skills transfer. Because even if it's not, an initial question, most of these places do a background check, so they need to address it at some point. So we coach them. The next part of that is actually connecting them with employers, and we're very fortunate in Jacksonville to have a lot of connections. We've got quite a few people in really good jobs. I'm just amazed at some of the things that come our way, and we have a good reputation, and we're happy about that, and we try to talk to our guys about keeping that, but we connect them, we help them find a job, and we do two things with that. So our desire is to help them find the job that they really want, the job that's going to keep them content in life and working towards their goals. A lot of times those are not the jobs that are available right away. And so we'll help them find that first job that helps them pay off court costs, helps them pay off probation fees, gets them to work quickly. And we continue to work with them to try to find that forever job. So this can take a little bit of time. Those forever jobs aren't always the quickest to pop up. Every now and then we'll have some guys who get it right away, and they're there for a long time, and we're real happy about that. But usually it's an investment of time that never recoups financially, but it recoups somewhere else, we believe. We know these services reduce victimization, they reduce crime, and they save the taxpayers a lot of money. And we saw that from Mr. Fulwood earlier. Some great examples there. Cut course costs, incarceration expenses, property damage, not to mention all the emotional turmoil that's connected. Over the last 5 years, we've been able to kind of keep some decent statistics as far as what we believe financially has been returned to the North Florida area through employment revenue. And so we approximate that through the jobs we're able to help secure, about $2 million is returned each year. We've been around for 30 years, since 1990. So if you add that all together, it's been a great benefit to North Florida. Our primary goal, however, is spiritual. And we do hope to change the heart of each individual that we encounter, because we fully believe if we can change the heart, that will lead to change actions and a changed lifestyle. So again, thank you for this time. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Witt. Once again, I can definitely resonate with that. I know some returning citizens may struggle finding a place that welcomes them, as far as a spiritual-based organization that welcomes them. And sometimes that label of felon or ex-offender can sometimes create a separation, especially with spiritually. Just it can create that separation. So thank you for pointing that out and assisting these returning citizens in that way. So we will hear next. Before we hear next, we have one more, our last poll for tonight for you guys to engage in, and then we will hear from Barbara Richards from Project 180. So we will put up the poll and ask you guys to answer one last time.
All right, guys. So the actual number was 59.6%, is how far it dropped from the 2012 voting turnout to the 2016 turnout, which is substantial. All right.
And I wanted to piggyback off of that. I've definitely seen a change as far as the initiatives to get everyone to come out and vote. I can tell you just today alone, I've received 2-3 phone calls. I've already voted. And I don't know about any of you guys, but every single day I've received phone calls, text messages, just to get the word out there. So if you guys haven't already done so, make sure you guys mail in, or if you hope on voting, find out where your local polls will be, and yeah, come out and vote. So yeah, we will hear next from Barbara Richards.
Hi again, everyone. I'm representing Project 180, which is a very small nonprofit in Sarasota, Florida. We're small but mighty. And what we do, we have 6 different initiatives. I'll run through those very quickly. And then I'd like to tell you about 3 things that I really feel are extremely important when it comes to reentry. So the 6 initiatives we teach CEO workforce education class and a financial literacy course that's 8 weeks long, one time a week for 2 hours in prisons and jails. We have an information and referral service, which we share freely with anyone who asks. All of the resources that we've gathered by county, we have county by county lists of different resources, primarily programs, housing, and employment resources. We have an annual lecture series for the general public. We're piloting a program in partnership with the Department of Corrections. We work with probation to get lists of individuals who are coming back from state prison to Sarasota County. We make contact, usually by phone, through the caseworkers or release officers or classification officers at the prisons to converse with these individuals before they're returning and find out what they need, and then do our best to fulfill those needs, from funding for housing to clothing, food, work boots, telephones, all sorts of different things, so that when they come back, they know they have a little package waiting for them that's specific to each of them. It's not terribly difficult for us because we have probably a maximum of 5 people coming back to Sarasota County per week. So it's not quite as much as it would be in a place like Duval County. And then our residential program is probably the most important piece of our program. We serve 12 men who are formerly incarcerated and are in active recovery. The gentlemen live in 2 different houses. We have 2 houses, 6 beds each. And the homes are in middle class neighborhoods, working class neighborhoods. They're in great shape. And the men say that when they move in, they feel like they've already accomplished something. So it really helps them get off to a good start. We provide nutritious food for 3 meals a day. The residents pay $175 a week in a program fee. So we have the stable housing for up to 2 years, nutritious food, clothing, shoes, work boots, steel-toed boots that are brand new. Tools if someone needs those to start off their job. We help them get their right to drive restored. We will match their payments toward their fines and fees, so that they are able to, we'll match that up to $1,000 per person. So if someone has $2,000 in fines and fees, we'll pay half of that. We've applied for grant funds recently. We'll find out next week, so that we can have up to $1,000 per resident to spend for medical and dental care. All of the men who come in have terrible teeth, and many of them have medical issues as well that need to be addressed. We take our residents to cultural events, as well as provide social introductions to local city leaders, the state attorney, the public defender, the sheriff, the mayor, city councilors, community or county commissioners, and judges and others who are leading the community. That is something that they really love because it means that they don't have to see somebody in a courtroom. They can actually, see them on the street and walk up to them and say hello, and they're on a first name basis. So that's really meaningful to help individuals feel like they really are truly reintegrating into the community, which is our mission. And our vision is that we wish to reduce poverty, homelessness, unemployment, and a return to criminal behavior for formerly incarcerated citizens. We also don't turn away individuals who can't pay. So if someone comes in, they have no money, we don't charge an administration fee. We bring them in, help them find a job, and then in almost all cases, they pay back their program fee that they still owed, and we find that that really helps with financial management. So all of these things that I've just mentioned really have to do with the first point that I wanted to emphasize, which is providing long-term comprehensive services. And we personally prefer a small program where we can deliver services really one-on-one, but with strong group support from the other men in the program. The second thing that we think is really important is changing our language as a society. When we talk about individuals who have been incarcerated and individuals who have an addictive disease, we make sure we don't use the terms ex-offender or ex-con or jailbirds or meth heads or any of these derogatory terms that have really come about in the last probably 100 years. So what we do is to substitute by saying, a man or a woman or a friend or a neighbor who has been incarcerated, an individual or a citizen who's been incarcerated. And when we refer to individuals who have addictive disease, that's exactly how we refer to them. The third thing that I'd really like to emphasize tonight is the need for public education so that we can see change happen in the community. One of the ways that Project 180 has been doing that since 2014 is to hold an annual lecture series. In 2013, we did a nationwide media audit and found that there were only 2 articles in 1 year that had been written about or produced about prisoner reentry. So we decided to start the conversation in our community. Our lecture series is called Strong Voices, Strong Subjects, and we hold it every year. We have a 3-part lecture series in which we usually have a scholar provide our first keynote address, and we have a panel of individuals who have either been involved in the topic that we are addressing that season. And the third one is an individual who has really been through the system and understands the topic on a very personal basis. So some of the topics that we have addressed are addiction, recovery, and recidivism, the prison experience, the implications of disadvantage for crime and punishment, the effects of incarceration and reentry on the family. And this year we're looking at celebrating second chance employers. Because of COVID, 2 of our lectures were postponed until this month and next month. And I'm proud to say that next month on November 13th, Dave Dahl of Dave's Killer Bread is our speaker. You all may know him. He's basically an iconic figure, someone who really was able to thrive and finally, after 4 prison sentences, to thrive and renovate his family business, which was a bakery, produce an excellent product, and then become really a national figure in terms of second chance employment. So we're excited about looking forward to that. We found that the lecture series really builds community around our cause. It increases the likelihood that citizens will both rent to and hire formerly incarcerated citizens. And it's actually become a great source for Project 180 for board members, committee members, and volunteers and donors. So I encourage everyone to really become involved in community education as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. That was really good. Just learning about all the services that Project 180 has to offer our returning citizens. Especially what I want to highlight about what you said is just the verbiage around returning citizens. I know myself am guilty certain times of saying some of the words that I may not think may be offensive. Just those words you highlighted, felon, ex-offender. So that was very good that you highlighted that. And yeah, so we're going to move on to our next segment, which will be the Q&A. I'm going to turn it over to Michelle, and then we will hear back. I will add a little tidbit in after that. So.
And you guys can feel free to continue to submit those questions as well. So I'm going to take it from the top. Our questions that we got from Mr. Volt's presentation. Mr. Volt, somebody was wondering whether the ex-prisoners, generally speaking, are prevented from running for office.
Yeah, generally speaking, when you lose your, when you get a felony conviction in the state of Florida, you lose your civil rights, which includes voting, and as well as the right to run for office, as well as the ability to serve on a jury, as well as the ability to own a firearm. And in order to get those rights restored outside of voting, you have to go before the clemency board. And the truth is, I've seen kind of both sides of that. I actually had my rights restored through the clemency process, and was grateful for that. But I've also seen that's an incredibly arbitrary process in which some people have to wait decades to kind of meander through and get their hearing. So it's quite a process, and it's definitely a high priority for us to try and streamline that clemency process so people can get their civil rights restored.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Thank you. Maybe that's something we should look into, maybe a town hall on the clemency board. This question is from Mr. Fulwood. What are the requirements for the participation within New Hope? That being said, somewhat of a follow-up question, but are there limitations on who can use New Hope's services, so to speak?
Certainly to some extent. So anyone who's been affected by the justice system, we don't take capital murders or sex criminals, people with sexual felonies, I'm sorry. So really, we do take some violent crimes, but for the most part, capital crimes, if you have a capital felony or sex offense, we don't allow you in the program. But we do work, we refer people to Prisoners of Christ and other programs that do accept folks with sex crimes and other capital crimes.
Do you see a lot of those capital crimes within Jacksonville?
You know, actually, we don't get a lot of folks who, you know, say you got a felony charge for murder and got out 20 or 30 years later. We typically don't see a lot of those folks that show up because a lot of the people we recruit while they're in prison. And so we go behind the bars and we do some of our programming in a program called Ready for Release. So we go into the prisons, we're in about 20 prisons right now, and we build the relationships before they get out. So we try to recruit folks who meet the program criteria. And when they get out, they sort of show up at the front door, and then we get them going on. So we have the pre-release component and then our post-release component. So typically we don't see folks that don't fit the criteria. A lot of those folks don't come to the program.
Well, that's good to know. And I also have a second question for you, which was, is Project Open Doors still open and functioning? And is there any way we could help in that aspect?
You know, the open and functioning is I think it's still around. I mean, the whole ban the box initiative is still alive and well. I think that our chamber is really committed to it. You know, I think with COVID, everything has sort of lost momentum. But it's still around. We're still trying to get more private companies to ban the box, governmental agencies, et cetera. So, I think the initiative has slowed down some, but clearly there's still the need for it.
Thank you. Mr. Witt, this question is for you. Is there any cost to the client or the returning citizen whatsoever? Do you have to share earnings with the organization at all or anything like that?
So for the employment side, there's no cost at all. We operate through a public service grant. We're actually able to incentivize them when we help them find a job and they've worked there for 2 consecutive weeks full time. We're able to incentivize them in a monetary way. It's a small $100, but it helps them to come back so we can find out a little more information. A lot of times they get a job and they're gone. They're happy, In the houses, we do, and there's a couple reasons. One, we charge nothing when they first get out, and we charge nothing until they are employed. Once employed, we charge a small amount each week. And the main reason we do that, it does help us financially, but the main reason is we found out if they are involved in with their money, they take care of the house better. So that's the one of the big ones. And then it also helps them as a small, almost like a family group, to pool their money for food. So I think I know we charge $75 a week for the individuals living in the houses once they're employed.
Fair. Understand honestly, because it's amazing what you do. I can't lie, you and all of our panelists. And since I've got you here, we did have another question that came in. Excuse me, give me 1 second. I apologize. Oh, this was for Mr. Witt specifically and Mr. Fulwood as well. What do you guys see a recidivism rate? Do you see a certain percentage of clients that return to prison after going through your organization at all? I don't know which
Want
one.
me to go ahead, or you want to go ahead, Mr. Fulwood?
You go ahead.
Yeah.
Jeff.
I've been with the organization about 1.5 years, and so we have numbers, and we've went through another study with UNF. We do know a portion go back. We also know if they complete the residential program, it's dramatically less. One of the problems that we see with recidivism is there's no standard metric for measurement. The state has a metric, the Bureau of Prison has a metric, JSO has a metric, every county has a different metric. So it's not apples to apples. So it depends. You almost have to do a new study every time you talk to a new audience, because they're basing their percentage off of a number that it depends on where they got it from. So even the Florida Department of Corrections, in their last study, I believe this was the last study, it said they counted recidivism as back in the prison. Well, they may have been arrested and then never back in the prison. And they may have done 9 to 10 months in a local jail. In Florida, it's 1 year or less. Although they may have been rearrested and then found innocent, so we don't want to measure it by being rearrested. So there's a problem with measuring recidivism is I guess the bottom line.
Yeah. And we traditionally, and he's absolutely right. Depends on the state or county or you go to, but we typically use the Florida Department of Corrections metrics, and they're at about 25.7%, their recidivism rate. Our rate for our program is about 8.6%. So, we say our rate is about 1/3 of the state's rate for recidivism.
That's awesome. That's amazing. And yeah, you've got a good point, Mr. Witt. It's crazy because, it's hard to judge it by going into prison, and it's hard to judge it by being arrested, because as you said, you can easily be found innocent. So that is a tough one to really, I feel like, understand completely. And then the final few questions are for Ms. Richards. First being, do you have any issues with overcrowding? And then I'll go ahead and give you the second question of how do you accept forms of donations?
We do not have issues with overcrowding, and that is actually a point that we make to our residents. We do have homes, halfway houses in, or let's say other organizations in our area do run halfway houses, and they have sometimes 12 or 13 people in a home. In Sarasota County, there is a law that you may not have more than 6 unrelated individuals living in one household. And so we, as modeling for our residents, we never have more than 6 people in a home. Right now we have 4 in one, and tomorrow we'll have 4 in another. So we don't push it to try and fill the homes. We want people to come in who are not going to jeopardize the safety of the other individual's recovery process. And your second question was our funding. We're funded primarily by individuals. We also have local foundations, both community foundations and private family foundations that give to us. We do not accept government funding.
Do you accept donations in any form? Maybe like the boots you were talking about, things like that?
Oh, and in-kind donations as well. In fact, one of my staff members, Emily Rickerson, is on the on this Zoom meeting today, and she can tell you because she's folded a lot of clothes. we have a lot of donations coming in, and they're organized so people can go shopping when they arrive. But we're very fortunate that we have someone locally who donates steel-toed boots, and then we always buy clean underclothes, socks for everyone, and always new pillows and that sort of thing, so that everybody can come in and feel like they're in a really clean environment.
That's so awesome, especially to have that community support. You know, I mean, that's amazing. I have a question that just came in. I do have a few more, but I have a question that just came in, and I think this is more so general, and I'm gonna team that up with another one. The first is, and anybody can take these, whomever has input, is there a certain age for your organization that caters to? And secondly, do any programs, either yours or any you've heard of, cater to children that went to prison at a young age, 15, 16, and come out at a much older age, 30s, 40s at all?
I can respond. I'm sorry, go ahead, Reggie.
No, you go ahead. I'll jump in after you.
Okay. What we find is that even if they didn't go to prison early in life, they are, men in our program started using somewhere between the ages of 11 and 15. They were either introduced to drugs by a trusted adult, sometimes a parent, or they became addicted because they got hurt in sports or whatever and became addicted to oxycodone or OxyContin. And then what they say is that when they come into the program, it's the first time that they've had stability as an adult, because when you start using that young, you really don't learn how to live as an adult in the outside world. And this is where they learn how to do that.
And I know for the program, we only deal with adults, men and women, ages 18 and over. And so it kind of runs the gamut. We do have a lot of young adults that come in the program. And so we have had a youth program before through a Department of Labor grant. And there's other not-for-profits around that do focus on youth, like Eckerd, OIC in South Florida, and a few others that focus on youth who've offended and are trying to get back on track, or even are adults now or young adults. So there are programs out there that do focus on young people. Last year we saw about 500 people that came through our doors, and the bulk of those folks were probably well into their 30s or 40s, just because a lot of folks, it takes a while for it to really stick to come to a program like ours. A lot of times it's, a lot of the young people aren't ready for change yet. So unfortunately, they unfortunately may mess up a couple of times and then say, okay, now I need to get my life together. So we typically, I can't remember what our average age is, but if I had to guess, I would say probably mid 30s.
have recently been working with a group called Children of Inmates, and they linked us up with Bridges of Jacksonville, who have a lot of very young men who are parents. And they asked that we had individuals that were either real close to graduating our program or who already have graduated, if they would start mentoring some of these guys that were under 25. And so that's been a really great thing. We've only got one gentleman that's still in the program doing it. The rest, the other 5 gentlemen have graduated in the last 2 years. And so that's at the very beginning stages. However, and I don't think this applies, but you talked about individuals who are arrested at an early age. We've had in this last year a massive influx of people who were incarcerated as a juvenile with a life sentence, and that's been found unconstitutional now. I think it was called the Atwell case, but we've had quite a few from that who have come out. They've done their 25 years, so they're not young anymore, but they've done their 25 years and have come and resided with us. And it's like a different person than when they were 18. These guys are all doing great. And some of it is aged out, but they were incarcerated as a child, but I don't think that's what you're looking for.
Well, to be fair, I think we're all different people than we were when we were 18. So I don't think there's much difference there. I think that's going to clip. Mr. Volz, did you want to comment on that, or are you good? I think he might have stepped away.
I'm good.
You're good? Okay. All right. Well, that is going to close our question and answer section. Thank you guys for being so honest and open with us. And honestly, I want to thank you again for just coming and speaking with us. I don't know if I'll get the chance to thank you. So honestly, thank you for coming. Thank you for speaking with us. Thank you for being real with us and raw with us. And I'm going to send that back to Camille then.
Yes, and this is the last point I want to make before I turn this back over to Mr. Stone for closing remarks. If you guys are looking for a change, just be that change. And a great way to get started is by learning about these various organizations in this area, and maybe just in Florida in general or wherever you are located. And just follow us on social media. You can follow the Jacksonville Urban League's Center for Advocacy and Social Justice, follow the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition, Project 180, Operation New Hope, and Prisoners of Christ on social media. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Stone.
Well, I can do very little to add to that, Camille. That's wonderful. Just wanted to thank everyone who's been such a great help to this, but especially our interns, Camille, Will Thomas, Michelle Andrews, Jocelyn Mora, Vince Vince Lopez is in the background, but he works on criminal justice items as well. And he is actually working on one of our next town halls, which is going to focus on bail reform. Also Kyle Basinger and Teresa Saunders, both of them have worked on our access to oral health initiative, and without our interns, these things wouldn't happen. So we're really most appreciative. I want to thank everyone at the Urban League and at the center for their efforts, and all of you who are supportive. We are going to edit the video. We again apologize for what happened. We will edit that and get it out so that you can share this information that needs to be heard over and over again. There's so much to do. And one last thank you, and that's for our speakers and all of the efforts that they're making to help people. They're so aligned with the Urban League's mission to help those in need, and we just really appreciate it. And with that, we'll close for the evening and look forward to seeing you on our next town hall. Thank you. Oh, and by the way, we do have another one that's happening this Saturday. It's a community-wide town hall focused on public safety and crime reduction. That is coordinated by Rhonda Lee of the Urban League. So look for the links for that, and we look forward to seeing you there. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you all for coming out. See ya.
Appreciate all you guys.
Enjoyed the presentation.